All right, let's hop into GIGACHAD of Twitch. Hey, what's up, dude?
What's up? How's it going?
I think we're good to go. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
I just screwed up. Say something again?
No.
There we go.
Hello, Bazinga?
Yeah. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I love the intro, the GIGACHAD of Twitch. Finally, someone recognized. It takes a professional, Dr. K, to really recognize.
Absolutely, man. So let's just start off. So is it okay if I call you Squeex, or do you go by something else, or what?
You can call me Squeex.
Okay. Yeah, so I've heard amazing things about you, but they've always been non-qualified. So I hear quantitatively good statements, like amazing, but I don't know in what way. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do on Twitch and how it's so badass?
It's really badass. I speedrun Mario 64. Okay. So I try to beat a single game as fast as possible. And I basically just play, other games and do a lot of collabs and some IRLs. And I've sort of been like a new face recently, so I've been really enjoying it, just riding the wave.
Awesome, dude. Really happy for your success. So what other kind of stuff do you play?
Oh, so like I'm really into children's games. So like Mario Party versus Ludwig has been going on right now, where we've been taking it a little too seriously. I also play like CS:GO, Counter-Strike. I used to play Dota 2, but that was off stream. Just like everything. I mean, I think I really, my brain just jumps from one game to another, and I get so focused on it. So whatever I'm into is really what I play.
And when you say things have been getting too serious with Ludwig, what does that mean?
Oh, we're out for blood, Dr. K. Let's dive into it. Ludwig is trying to speedrun Mario Party, and I'm trying to speedrun it, so we're just going back and forth to try to beat
speedrun Mario Party.
It's all of the mini games with the CPUs at master mode. So
I see.
Yeah. So it's a little embarrassing to be like a 30-year-old man, like looking up strats, but here we are.
Wait, but I'm confused. So Mario Party, does it end? I thought you just keep playing rounds.
No. So like, it's not the board; it's just the mini games. So you have to do every single mini game and win them.
I see.
Yeah.
So you have to beat each mini game once
and as fast as possible. Okay. Versus the hardest CPUs. Yeah.
And so how many CPUs? It's like up to like 4 people, or you can have like 8.
It's up to 4 people, so it's you versus 3 others,
CPUs.
And yeah, you sort of have an unreasonable amount of hate for like Donkey Kong and Daisy at the end of it. So it's basically broken me, is what I'm trying to say.
And how long does it take to do your average? Like, what's a good speedrunning time for like Mario Party?
Like sub 2 hours is like a really good time. So like the world record right now was beaten yesterday, and it's like 142. I think Ludwig's was 149, so he's now second place.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where are you?
Oh, no. I didn't know it was going to get... I'm at 2 hours and 9 minutes.
Oh,
I'm never going to catch up. That's horrible.
Well, I mean, isn't it somewhat RNG? Like...
It is 100% RNG. You front load the speedrun with like the random games, and then all the skill-based games come second. So like it's literally just like it's the most infuriating thing to do, because you're just rolling the dice for the first 2 mini games. It's a little ridiculous. You should join the arena, Dr. K. I want to see some Mario Party speedruns.
I will. So what? How? I don't know how to join the party. So Mario Party. That means that I have to stream off of Switch.
Yes, you stream off of Switch, and then we can make the transition from healthy gamer to unhealthy gamer.
Beautiful, let's do it.
30 hours a day.
I have been playing Dota for a while, so that I think that makes me more of an unhealthy gamer. But
yeah, no, then you share my pain.
Why'd you stop the Dota?
Because I didn't understand what was going on after like 500 hours of playing.
Okay, that's pretty fair. That's
I was like, maybe I should play a game I enjoy and I understand.
Yeah.
So like Mario Party and like blocks, Super Mario 64, just basic games.
So what's your fastest time in Super Mario 64?
So there's different categories. I do 16 stars. So beating the game with 16 stars, my time is 17:03.
Okay.
17 minutes. And then for 70 stars, my time is 52 5205 or something. I don't remember.
And 16 is the minimum required to beat the game, right?
You can actually beat the game with 0.
If you use some sort of weird bypass or something?
Massive glitch, yeah,
Okay.
like these massive glitches. But mine's like, mine has backward long jumps, so it's like a pretty massive glitch. But no, you could beat that game with no stars, but I choose 16 and 70.
Okay.
For the main category. Have you ever played Super Mario 64?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite games.
It's the best.
I've only played it once, though. So I played it once, got to 120 stars, and then the magic of, like, discovering new worlds is, like, gone forever. So
Yeah.
I haven't been able to go back and play it since it, honestly, like, originally came out. I think I bought the N64 and just, like, blew through Super Mario 64 back. I mean, this must be around 2000, actually. Or even...
That game was awesome when it came out. Like,
Yeah.
it was everyone was obsessed with it.
It was...
Wait, so have you seen a speedrun of it?
Yeah, I've seen some speedruns. Like, I've talked to, I think Simply does a lot of speedrunning. And then I've seen a couple, but I see there are these weird glitches and stuff that I never knew was possible.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so I have a real question.
Okay.
With, like, speedrunning, do you think, like, all of that is just a big waste of time? Like, spending hundreds upon hundreds of hours on one thing. Like, do you think that's... And I see, like, a lot of people who play games competitively or speedrunning, it seems like they don't enjoy it. So, like, could you talk about what, what the inclination is to do something like that?
Well, there's two questions. One is, what's the inclination?
Mm-hmm.
And then the original question you asked was, do you think that's a waste of time?
Yes.
So let me ask you a question in return. And by the way, if that gets annoying at any point, you can just tell me and I'll just answer things. But what's the value of time?
What's the value of time? Well, it's valuable because it's finite, and it's I think time having fun is time well spent.
Okay, so is the because if we're talking about whether something is a waste of resources, we have to understand what's the resource worth, and then we can determine whether it's a waste. So time is finite. That inherently makes it valuable. Okay, fair enough. And then time is essentially, you're saying it's a currency to have fun.
Or to get some sort of utility out of it. So
okay, so what are the utilities of time? How can we use time?
We could use it to get better at Mario 64 speedrunning.
We can absolutely do. And so is that
we
something...
can grind out those VLJs.
What is VLJ?
VLJ. It's a backward long jump.
Okay.
It's a trick.
Okay. And so I think it depends on what's the value of time. So like if you, I mean, so like we can look at something, and I may get canceled here in a second, but we can look at something like art, and you can ask like, what's the value of art? Like, what does it do? So I don't think it does much, right, in terms of like straight utility, but I think it's valuable. I think and so if we sort of look at what is the value of time, I think that ultimately determines whether something that you do is a waste or not. I also don't think that something can, well, I mean, I'm sure it can, but I don't tend to think about activities as objectively valuable or not valuable. I think it's very subjective depending on what is important to people. So is speedrunning a waste of time? I would say human beings really, really enjoy challenging themselves and mastering things. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be in space. We wouldn't have sailed the ocean. There's just a human burn to like, I'm going to conquer this thing.
Sure.
So that's baked into us. And I think it's also kind of presumptive or judgmental to say that creating a piece of art is objectively superior to speedrunning something in Super Mario 64.
True, because that's kind of art in a way.
I think there are people who see it that way and recognize it that way.
Sure.
You're grinning really big, so I have a feeling
I have a goofy face, Dr. K. I can't help it. That's why I'm a little nervous for this conversation, because I always look ironic. This is just what my face looks like, so I always have a perpetual smirk on.
Okay, sorry. That's good to know.
Yes.
I'm curious, what were you thinking as I was speaking?
Oh, I'm thinking of the chat just going crazy about equating art to Mario 64 speedrunning.
Okay.
But that's really what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so I think it ultimately comes down to, what are you doing it for? So I think sometimes sometimes our mind can grab some kind of goal and we just like want to get better with it without really stopping to think about like what are we doing here?
Sure.
So like mindless grinding towards a particular goal without intention without intention, I think is harmful. So if we're just mindlessly grinding it for just for the sake of grinding, and I think achievement is good, but really stopping and thinking to yourself like, okay, what do I want to do with my time? Is this aligned with like what I want to be in this world?
Yeah. Well, something like anecdotal, and I know you've like played a ton of games as well. I'm sure you can attest to this, but is that like oftentimes when I used to play Counter-Strike every day, I would notice some of my friends would play it and were not having fun. And I wanted to, I think something like Counter-Strike can be a really fun hobby, but at a certain point, the grind becomes like, what's the point of all of this? You should ask yourself, like, is this actually something that brings me joy or scratches a competitive itch? Or is it just a convenient thing to put on and do to like silence whatever is going on in your head? So, there's been a lot of like online interventions of like, why are you playing this? Let's do something fun.
Yeah, so I think that's really well said, Squeex, because I think sometimes what happens is I had this recently with Dota where I was like playing and I was like, I want to get good at the game. I've been declining in skill steadily over the last decade, and I was like, this is really fun. I really want to get good at it. And so I spent about 4 hours really playing seriously, and then I stopped for a second and I was like, okay, if I'm going to invest in getting good at something, and it's not for recreation, it's like this is a goal I'm going to set for myself.
Sure.
And I'm going to devote 500 hours to getting good at something. And then I was like, is this really what I want to invest in? And I was like, you know what? We're not going to get good at Dota. We're just going to continue to suck.
Yeah. Everything else in your life has to deteriorate a little bit for you to get good at Dota, I think, is a requirement.
Yeah. So instead, I'm trying to focus on something else instead.
Yeah. Well, this is like and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just completely speaking out of my ass, but like, I feel like a lot of times, a lot of very competitive people who can be competitive professionally, they often are tending like to go towards gaming because it's such a convenient and accessible way to be competitive. So like, whereas if back in the day before online gaming or Xbox Live, a lot of these competitive people would be going out to like start businesses or to find other hard hurdles to jump through. I feel like now with gaming, all these competitive people are like, let me just try to get ranked global in CS:GO or like climb the ladder of Dota 2. It's just something that I've observed, and I want to hear what your take is on that.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you've observed?
Yeah, so like I've seen it. I used to work in an investment bank, and there's a lot of very, very competitive, hardcore people there. And I noticed that their mannerisms to like of competition, like they'd be like, let's grind, like wake up, hit this, look at the market. You probably have worked with people like that too.
I have.
And I remember when I was doing competitive gaming, a lot of the habits and characterizations are almost one-to-one, where like they're like routining out their day, they're grinding, and it's not even for like, it's just for the sake of competition. It's like you can sense when someone has a competitive drive in them. And I think there's a lot of overlap in seemingly disconnected things. So I'm thinking if gaming didn't exist, what would these competitive people be doing instead?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you've made that observation, I think that's good enough.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I don't know. I've worked with a lot of people in banking, and I've worked with a lot of people in gaming. I think you're the first former banker. I've also worked with a lot of former bankers.
Yeah.
But you're the first former banker I've met who has gone into gaming. That's fascinating.
Well, it was an accident, Dr. K. I got, that Zoom call that in that fintech company where he laid off like 900 people over Zoom?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So it was like this viral story. I was one of those people.
You got laid off?
Yeah.
Nice.
I was on that call. So I know you talked to Emily. We have a very similar origin story where we both got fired, and now here we are just streaming.
So can I ask you a little bit about like you? and
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
where Squeex came from?
Sure.
So yeah, tell me a little bit about like where you grew up, what you were doing before streaming.
Yeah, well, I actually was born in Mumbai. So I
Okay.
moved to the US like at a very, very young age. And I went to college at UC Davis,
Okay.
which is the school you go to if you don't get into Berkeley or LA.
Hmm.
And I studied economics. And from there, I worked in a bank. Or excuse me, I had an internship at a bank. Then I went to another bank, like an investment bank or wealth management bank. And then I went to a fintech company, got laid off. And thankfully, streaming picked up. And but I was streaming throughout the whole thing. So
Mm.
I've been streaming on Twitch for like probably 7 years,
Okay.
but
Wow.
only recently have gotten viewers.
Okay.
Like within the last probably like 2 years, people
How
have
does
started watching. So
how does it feel to have viewers?
you know, I want my I want to say it feels about the same as when I didn't have viewers. I used to have one or two people that watched, and those are some of my favorite streams. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't like it doesn't impact me as much as I thought it would,
And how
to
did
be
you think it
honest.
was going to impact you?
Well, I thought I'd be like, "Yup, the king! Like I solved Twitch, like I'm gonna sit on my throne." You know what I mean? Like because I feel like in my first stream, Dr. K, I played this game called Outlast, and I ended stream because 20 people joined, and I got nervous, I got shy, so I ended the stream there. So I was like, imagine if I overcome my shyness and get 50 viewers, 70 viewers, and then I think I realized that like that bar is just forever moving and to not take any ownership over my channel. Instead, like see it from a third party a little bit.
And when you see it from a third party, what does that mean?
That basically means I try to disconnect my ego from my Twitch channel because I feel like it's a healthier way to stream, and my focus is just on making the most entertaining stream and even doing things that people don't want me to do, like streaming games that I just want to stream. That's always been my prerogative to just have the most entertaining streams no matter what, because I feel like viewership is typically an accident. Like most of it's random in my eyes. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. I'm a little bit curious. Do you have a sense of how you came to that conclusion that that's what you want to do? Like, how did you decide to do that? How did you separate ego from your stream performance and sort of focus on making a good stream instead of making a successful stream?
uh, I think because I used to see a lot of successful unhappy people. So I
In
think
banking?
in everything in banking, like some of the most miserable clients I ever talked to were like multi millionaires. And so like I just equate numbers to be some arbitrary thing, and so I think it was the same thing with Twitch. And I almost feel like an audience can sense when you're streaming for them instead of like to them.
Hmm. And what do you think was the nature of their unhappiness, these multimillionaires?
I think it's because the bar is ever moving. I think like if you don't have a solid foundation, and I'm not saying I do, but a solid foundation of who you are, then oftentimes you try to perform for others, and that comes in the sense of like chasing money or fame or viewers, because you look at yourself through the eyes of someone else. And so I think that ultimately is going to be a forever moving bar. Because yeah, you'll have people look at you, but they won't look at you. They'll just look at what you've produced, whether that's a viewership number or like amount of wealth generated, etc. So like I feel like honesty is contagious in
I
terms of like who you are.
I understand that there's a meme that you and I are one person,
Yeah, we are.
but I feel like I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, except you have a beautiful head of hair.
Do you not have a beautiful head of hair?
Okay, I have been struggling with baldness. I
What is that?
I'm balding from the top. I got 2 dead zones over here, man. It's horrible.
How does that make you feel?
Oh, I feel great about it. I love it.
Okay.
I actually love it.
Yeah, you know,
It's okay. I'm not upset about it. I'm happy about it actually.
but help me understand how you're happy about it.
Well, I just like growing old because I feel like my brain hasn't evolved past 8th grade, so I see my body changing and like my back hurting, and I'm walking more like an Indian uncle with my hands like folded behind my back.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah,
Classic uncle move.
classic uncle move. And I don't know, I kind of like growing old, like physically, but having that dumb 8th grader brain in here. So
Okay.
I don't know, it's very entertaining to see, I guess.
You seem very so Squeak. Is there anything in particular you want to talk about today? Like,
Oh
I'm
no, I have
totally
no
fine
plan.
doing what we're doing, but
No, I got no plan, Doc.
Okay.
Okay, you can take the reins.
so I mean, you said that if you have a solid foundation and you don't see yourself through the eyes of someone else, so you seem to have a pretty solid foundation.
I think so, yeah. Like I think I know who I am, and I'm proud of it and confident in it. So yeah.
And who are you?
Oh, what a question. Who am I? Like, do you want me to list like personality or?
Sure. I mean, you said you know who you are and you're pretty
Yeah.
proud and confident. So, who are you?
Well, I know I'm like a very indifferent, goofy guy
Mhm.
who and I really like funny and entertaining things. Like all I consume is like fun, like funny shows, funny movies, funny people, and that's something I value is a sense of humor in its truest sense. Like I don't, I like people who people who don't take things seriously is something that I try to emulate, and I think I'm confident, and sometimes I can be a little arrogant, but yeah, I would say that's, and I'm a very disorganized, as you can tell by the way I speak.
I don't think I didn't think that was disorganized.
Okay,
I think
fair.
in fact it was it's a very hard question to answer, right? Because you're like, oh, like, and then I think you came out with a really nice like you have some degree of personality characteristics. You seem to
Sure.
enjoy being goofy and kind of squeezing the joy out of life. Sounds like you kind of roll with the punches and you derive value from things that are, I'd say, a little bit more internal than external. I see you chasing experiences and moments more so than numbers and metrics, which I think is kind of ironic because oftentimes that's how we get the best numbers and metrics.
Hmm.
Was that
Well,
pretty fair?
yeah, that's fair. But I've also like experiment. This isn't like I don't want to take ownership of too much over that because I've also like tried a bunch of like self-help stuff in the past. And to be honest, I am a little critical of self-help because I think there's a lot of garbage out there. Uh, so like and I know like it's popular now, like stoicism and YouTubers who do like self-help. Um, and I remember going through that gauntlet. So I've tried to work on myself as much as possible, like journaling. I used to wake up, take cold showers. I've done all that shit. So, it was something, it took a lot of work. It wasn't something I was like,
Can we can I ask? I'm really I'd
yeah,
love to
yeah.
hear about that journey. So like, can you tell me a little bit about like what growing up was like for you?
Sure. So I grew up and I was a pretty like classic suburban Indian family. I had very like loving parents. Um, and growing up was I think I was lucky in the sense of my parents not putting too much emphasis on my grades compared to other Indian households where like a lot of kids' worth was like 4.0 honor roll, etc. Because I got dog shit grades throughout my schooling. Um, and I went to a community college for 2 years and like really turned my shit around. And this is when I actually, before, sorry to jump back and forth, I didn't do well in school, but I tried like really hard to. So it felt like a personal failing. I really, really studied and got really bad grades. And I thought that at like probably in retrospect, it's probably because I had some form, and this is gonna be so cringe, but I had undiagnosed ADHD, likely because I've noticed small behaviors that I do where I like over drink cups of coffee, I have a hard time focusing, etc. And so I'm oftentimes adult Squeex is more forgiving to young Squeex because I used to take that as a failing. So I went to community college and really fucking worked harder than I've ever worked. So I used to work 2 jobs. I used to be a speech and debate coach while internship at Wells Fargo. I know, right? I was a varsity high school speech and debate kid. All right, I don't want to brag. Yeah, exactly. I know my parents were so proud until they realized I was doing basically drama as well, speech and debate. But so yeah, I did. I was a speech and debate coach, worked at a bank, and then went full-time community college for 2 years before transferring to Davis, where I really grinded as hard as I could to get my econ degree, and then got really lucky to get into investment banking and grinded really hard. And this is when I was probably the most unhappy, was when I was working at an investment bank because
You and everybody else.
yeah, but that's the thing. Like you probably know better than I. Your unhappiness is like the loyalty tax you pay in investment bank to hopefully one day become an upper executive and live a better, quote unquote, better life. So it's like a tax you pay to live in a penthouse is the way I saw it. And I didn't know if that was something, a trade that I wanted to participate in. But anyway, this whole time I was doing self-help. Sorry, I got completely off track.
No. I don't think that was off track at all. I loved hearing that story. And so when did you start with the self-help stuff?
I started with the self-help stuff in high school. So this is like 2011.
So you were trying really hard to do well in school. And what makes undiagnosed ADHD cringe?
Well, I just think it's cringe when someone comes to you, probably a doctor or someone, and is like, I think I have this because I read about it online.
What makes that cringe?
Because I feel like it's delegitimizing like true diagnoses, where like someone sits down with you and like actually looks at your behavioral patterns. It's probably annoying as a doctor, I'm sure.
I mean, I imagine maybe some people are annoyed by it. I've certainly seen doctors like that. But a couple things that I've found. The first is that sometimes people are wrong, which is like totally fine, right? Because people aren't trained. But I find that the more I practice medicine, the more if a patient comes in and says, I think I have this, to like take that seriously because they know themselves better than you ever will.
Sure.
And that if they think, so I mean, if people come to me and say I have undiagnosed ADHD, I'll, there's a small chance that they're looking for an Adderall prescription. I don't think that's the case today.
Sure.
And so unless there's a clear ulterior motive, like I think people are pretty smart and they know themselves pretty well. And doctors should listen when someone says, hey, I think I've got this. Like, I don't think it's an affront to the diagnostic process. I think it's in fact a really good piece of information.
Sure.
And so what did you, so like it sounds like you felt like you were a personal failure in high school, or it was a personal failing. And so you turned to self-help to do what exactly? What were you looking for?
I was looking to make my parents proud is really what I was looking for. Basically, I wanted to find a way to do well in school.
And do you have siblings?
No.
Okay. And so what was your self-help journey like?
It was I've done everything. Like I'm talking about like those YouTube videos where they have like the Batman theme song in the background and just a guy working out. I watched those videos. I used to watch like the fit. I got really into fitness. I got really into journaling, into planning for my days, into Ayurveda, into meditation, into like I've tried everything under the sun. Like just you name like a trend and I've done it.
And what was it like doing that stuff?
I learned a valuable lesson. I learned that like I feel like it was eye-opening because I feel like a lot of those things were prescriptive, but they weren't solving the problem. Like it would give you momentary relief, but what I saw, and realized this during like reading like Stoicism, like meditate Marcus Aurelius and all that shit, was that if I really got into Stoic philosophy, that becomes like my new barometer. So like I have anxiety, so I'm gonna look into Stoicism, and instead of tackling my anxiety, I measure it distracts me and be like, well, I have to make sure I wake up and write in my journal. I have to practice these habits. And that becomes like my new God instead of tackling anxiety. So I found self-help to be more than anything, a shift of focus away from your anxiety instead of solving the problem itself.
Yeah, I think that's, let me just make sure I understood you correctly.
Sure.
Because so when people struggle with a problem, they hear about solutions from the self-help space, right? Like if I struggle with anxiety, like if I can learn to be a stoic, then my anxiety will be fixed.
Right.
And so then instead of actually fixing your anxiety, what you try to do is become a good stoic.
Exactly.
And the better
exactly
stoic
right.
you can become, eventually, if you keep on leveling up stoicism, anxiety will be conquered. So it's almost like you're using stoicism as a distraction away from fixing your problems.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And so, weirdly enough, self-help is a way to not help yourself.
Yeah, that's so well put. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's almost as if it's like shining a spotlight away from your true problems, and it almost keeps you. Because I was struggling with like burnout and anxiety, and the best self-help I ever got was to quit my job. That was the best. Like
Quit or
fuck all
fired?
these cold. I quit my investment banking. Imagine if I just revised.
Okay. I was like, okay.
It's like talking to it. Yeah, no, I quit that job and then got fired later at another job. But yeah, so like the best self-help was just not like actually tackling the problem. So that, that sort of changed my perspective on everything.
And what was the problem?
The problem was my job. Like I don't think humans were meant to do that. And I think like you'll see in the tech space and social media space that they use things like meditation, and like it's a hot topic because they know that their working conditions are just not normal. It's not normal to be in the office at Google 24/7. Like they need to distract their employees, which is my theory. So like that's like why they have all these mission statements. It's almost like you're joining a religion, and they have like meditation chambers and cold plunge salons or whatever. Because I think like they recognize their employees need to distract themselves from the problem, which is them. Oh, that's my theory. That's a little radical. I know,
So Squeex, I pretty much agree with you 100% with everything that you say.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So as someone who has worked at those companies, I think that they recognize, they're like, okay, here's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is put whipped cream on top.
Yeah, exactly.
And the whipped cream isn't enough. Like now we're going to do a chocolate sauce on top.
Yeah.
And now we're going to do whatever we can. And by the way, now that we have whipped cream and chocolate, we're going to double your heaping of shit.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Because like now that we've managed to make it, like this makes it palatable, right? Like you guys can eat. So like the more and more wellness stuff we do, like the bigger helpings of shit, like you just shovel it in your mouth at greater rates.
Yeah, exactly right. No, that's exactly. I mean, well, here's the thing, and this is where I value honesty and I value all this stuff. Like when I love Twitch, my favorite platform. I wouldn't be anything without them. But what I'm critical about is on Twitch, like Twitch has like mental health month going on, and my cynic part of my heart is like going to a Twitch hosting mental health is sort of like going into a burning building for a fire extinguisher instruction book, because Twitch itself, the way they act are to keep people on their platform, whether that's like through ad incentive programs or the viewer retention through channel points. So I feel like even Twitch or social media parading around like mental health or something, that's also in a way almost performative because I think it's easy to say, but it's harder to act in that space.
So I think that's very fair. So I think a lot of Mental Health Awareness Month is performative and virtue signaling. I also think that we've seen this a lot where a lot of companies, not just Twitch, have a tension between different things.
Sure.
I would go out on a limb, and maybe I've been bought and paid for. I really don't think so. But I think Twitch is honestly one of the better companies. So,
Sure.
so
I agree.
like I think they were doing a lot of this stuff before it was cool. And even like Twitch has helped their content creators like learn how to pay taxes and shit like that. So
All right. Oh, I need to learn. I fucked up my taxes so bad.
yeah. So like I think this is old news. So this is like 4 years ago. Twitch was like asked all their partners like, what do y'all need? Instead of like, hey, we're gonna give you subscriptions to mindfulness apps, they were like, what do y'all need? And they were like, we want training in like theater and performance stuff. Like we want to learn some of the classics. We need help with our mental health, and we need to learn how to pay our taxes and manage money. And Twitch actually developed a lot of stuff. So I and maybe that's, we're
Sure.
I understand I could be biased here, but to be honest, I think there's like virtue signaling, and there are definitely real people in the organization who are like championing for like improvement of stuff. But I totally get that each platform is kind of like stuck between, okay, we want to use our platform for good, and by the way, if we can keep people on our platform instead of somebody else's platform, we can make money.
Yeah,
And
but it's almost like to a predatory amount where because like they want every platform is fighting for every second of your time. So like they'll go through any extent to keep you on their website. And I just feel like it's when something like mental health is paraded around, I feel like if you really believe in mental health, then you would act in a way that believes in it instead of just paying lip service. Like then make it so that people stream less, or make it so that people are not attracted to being on Twitch all the time. Because I think watching Twitch all the time is probably extremely like a negative on someone's brain and self-worth and self-image, and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I'm a little too critical, but
no, I don't think you're too critical. I mean, I think you're, I think it's a fair criticism. I think it's just, so let me ask you this.
sure.
What would it look like what would you want platforms to do? Like, what would that actually look like?
So I would want platforms to remove an incentive for people to stream long hours in terms of like ads, because I think that's extremely predatory so for example, for like Twitch's ad incentive program, if you hit a certain amount of hours, you get a massive payout. That's sort of the way it works. And I think that's destructive to the quality of content that you're going to get on Twitch. And it's extremely destructive for people who don't want to stream like 9+ hours on Twitch, because that's so damaging, I feel.
9+ a day?
Yeah.
Interesting. So there's a big payout change above 9 hours a day? Like how many
No,
hours?
no. It's the threshold is moving based off of what you streamed the previous month. But if you streamed a little bit more, you get a much bigger payout. So it's like a threshold they give you.
And does that change month to month?
It changes month to month.
Interesting.
And then the same thing with like channel points. I think channel points I could just imagine someone on Twitch on like the user retention team, someone who's worked there being like, introducing like, oh, a way that rewards viewers for always being there through some sort of metric in the stream. It kind of reminds me of like Snapchat streaks. Have you ever used Snapchat before, Dr. K? It's like Snapchat had this thing where if you snap someone every day, the icon, you level up your icon basically. So it keeps people on their app to a way that I don't think is normal or natural. So I see that some of those changes. So I would try to stay away from those changes and focus more on like rewarding streamers for shorter, not like crazy long hours, because I don't think that equates to good content. I think shorter and more precise is sort of the way that Twitch should go.
I agree with you. And for the first time, we actually have data to like back up that assumption. So we find that when we reduce streamer burnout, their viewership and subs actually go up. by anywhere between 150 and 200%. So
Wow.
and I think it's so we have for the first time data to make that, and that data, by the way, is available because Twitch supported our program. So we like worked with 150 content creators, and we like
Sure.
did measurements of, okay, a year out, like how do people do if you actually take care of people's health? And so it's my belief that if you collect data, you will discover that, how can I say this? Mindlessly pushing the envelope by 2% at a time will not be the best strategy for long-term gain. So
Sure.
even all of this, like, this like shrinkflation and stuff like that like companies are doing, like, I don't think, I imagine that people are sort of, they're like making, okay, we're going to increase our profit by 2% by giving people 2 less French fries. And I think what's happening over time, though, I suspect that what's going to happen is that that's not actually like a good business model long term. That if people understand that you deliver high value and you're not going to nickel and dime them to death, and I think we see this with like some games where like some games are like I'm sure the microtransaction games make more money, but over time, I think that we'll discover that game developers who make really good games instead of dumpster fires that are full of microtransactions, those companies will do well.
Well, hopefully, because games have been dog shit, I feel like.
So I think yes and no. Like, I think, what do you think is going on with gaming?
Gaming is seen. I feel like investment banking is toxic and has been leaking into gaming, where people are just trying to find like it's like all to sort of summarize everything with Twitch and gaming and all that. It's like a disrespect to the audience. Ultimately, it's like the audience is so fucking stupid. They're gonna buy whatever the fuck we push out, so we're gonna push out garbage in terms of like microtransactions, DLC, NFT cards, etc. And I find that to be so disrespectful to like quality games.
Yeah, so I have a terrifying story if I can share it.
Oh yeah, I'd love it.
So my wife has an MBA, and I went to, when she was graduating, I went to some like, party or something. And there was like this dude there who was like, yeah, I was like, oh, what are you going to do after you're done? He's like, yeah, I'm like, I'd really like to move into the gaming space. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, you're an MBA who's going to move into, what games do you play? And he looked at me with disgust. He's like, I don't play games. I think that there are a lot of great opportunities for monetization, and that the market is under monetized. And I was like, no, like, you are everything that you are. This is bad. This is you people like you. I always thought y'all existed, but it's like terrifying to actually talk to y'all. And he's like, yeah, I'm excited by the opportunities to monetize this market.
Yuck. Ew.
And I was just,
he's gonna do so well, Dr. K. He's probably killing it right now.
He's killing it and killing us too.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, indie games have been really thriving.
Yeah,
so I like that.
I think actually games have gotten a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of hope. Even with some of the microtransaction stuff, I think it's like, I recently started playing, not sponsored or anything, but for real, I think that like Warhammer, Total War Warhammer is like a really good game from a DLC standpoint. Like, all the DLCs I think are too expensive and there's too many of them. But I really like that if you buy a DLC for game 1, it like carries over through all of your other games.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So like if you unlock something, like you have that thing unlocked for like 20 years. And even with the new games that they come out, like you still get those. So that I thought at least was pretty cool. Like, there's some continuity of microtransactions. Sure. As opposed to most companies, which will be like, okay, you have a microtransaction thing here. This will become irrelevant in 6 hours, and you'll have to purchase another one.
Yeah, true. That's like fucked up.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm maybe too much of a radical. I don't even like Counter-Strike skins, like $200, $300, even if it's aesthetic. Like, when did we as gamers accept that? Like, I remember in Counter-Strike Source, we'd go on to FPS Banana and download like Kirby grenades, I don't know why we are so willing to be like, yeah, this pixel is worth $4,000. I don't know. I think it's a little ridiculous, and too much money in like transactions just makes the game more about the transaction than it does about the game itself, which is why if you scroll on like a lot of these multiplayers, like Twitch directories, you see most of it is unboxing. most of the content centered around it is like based off of making money or like flipping something, and I think that's, I don't know, I just think that's pretty lame.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting things there. One is I think why is everything becoming so microtransaction oriented? I think it's because people are buying it, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, actually the biggest mistake that people make is that if there's a game that has a ton of microtransactions and you free to play it, you are still supporting their model. So a lot of people think that they're like, okay, I'm going to just free to play it or I won't buy cosmetics. But if you even purchase the game and free to play it, like that's good enough. So there's something really interesting about microtransaction psychology, which is that if there are a bunch of free to play people, the whales are going to spend more.
Yeah.
Because now there's all the plebs. And even if you're free to playing a game, you're horribly supporting the microtransaction model because you're being one of the plebs that fuels the ego of the whale.
Yeah, exactly.
And so a lot of these companies, they very well know that the majority of people will be like free to play, but we need those people in there to make the other people feel good about themselves.
Just a flex. To have like the whales flex, like, look at this.
So even free to playing a game or purchasing it and like not doing microtransactions is the reason that the games get away with it. It's not just about buying the stuff. It's about separating out the people who have it versus the people who don't.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's sort of like real life a little bit.
No, it's absolutely.
You can draw a corollary.
No, that's what's happened, right? So we have Gucci bags and we have $200,000 cars and we have like it's like basically the same. Like maybe there's all kinds of fancy stuff and human beings like to separate each other out. Sure. And then what used to happen in games, I don't know if you played like classic WoW or anything, is that in order to get so like in classic WoW, like when they released like arena and stuff like that, if you were at like the top of the server, you got a special mount. So it used to be that getting an Olympic gold medal was something that you had to compete in the Olympics and like surpass other human beings for. Now you can just buy one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of bullshit.
And then companies realized, they're like, okay, we can make things scarce. And people will pay money for it. And it's very, very like similar to just human psychology where we like to rank each other out.
Yeah, I think like I read somewhere that like people who are very rich living or rich relative to their neighbors are typically more satisfied than people who are rich living next to rich neighbors, which is kind of fucked up. But
I
makes
think
sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question actually to go back to Twitch? What changes would you make to a website or to social media in general, if you don't want to talk specifically about Twitch, that you would think would be better for en masse like people psychologically?
So I think the first thing to understand is that you can't make a criticism in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. So like having worked with a lot of people and now having some experience even like running an organization, but like I think that a lot of times when people complain, I'm not defending anything. I'm just saying that the implementation of a fix is far, far, far harder than the criticism itself. Like you can criticize people, you can say they should do this.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that there aren't predatory practices out there, but I think that anytime you get into the like implementation of fixing something, it becomes way more complicated than people realize.
Right. And there's so many vested interests too, like, Twitch is not.
So that's the other thing. Even if people are on board with like making things better, it's not as simple. It's like Dunning-Kruger, if you know what that is.
Yes.
So like people are like, oh, why can't people just do this? And it's like, well, there's like 1,000 reasons why you can't just do that. But I would first have to explain to you how things work so that you could understand why your proposed solution is stupid.
Yeah, right.
But I think that, so from a gaming standpoint, here's what I've seen. And we've even done some consulting around this where people want to create a positive community, right? So they're like, we want to make gaming like more friendly to different people of genders and ethnicities or whatever. Like we want to create a positive gaming experience. The problem is that, so the biggest change that I would make in gaming is that I would not tack that on after the game is made, which is what all of the game developers do.
Sure.
You've got our core loop of like, this is what the game is. And then you've got different divisions of video game companies. You've got like the, we're going to make a game, right? And then you've got the, like, we're going to make a story. We're going to balance things. We're going to develop mechanics. And then you've got these other fringe groups, like the microtransaction people, right, and the wellness people. Usually what happens is the game gets made, and then they go to the wellness people, the community people, and they're like, make us a healthy community. But the game has been made.
Yeah,
so the fundamental mechanics that will lead to toxicity or not lead to toxicity are already laid out. And you'll see this, like if you play a game that has been artificially microtransacted. So this is like a game, someone made a game, and then the microtransaction people were like, paywall, paywall, paywall. And then
you need more juice to do one more round of Peggle. Like shut the fuck up. I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to wait.
Right? So they tack on, like, and then the game just feels dumb. It's like, why on earth is like level 50 to 60 like this much of a grind? Like it's like 0 to 50 was fine, and then 50 to 60 suddenly it's a huge grind, and I can pay to boost or whatever. So sometimes you see that. On the flip side, you'll also see games where now the microtransaction people have become part of the core game. So they're not just like tacked on at the end. Like we're game developers, they're like in the design phases, in the narrative phases, in the, you know, they're like entering early on, which in one way I think is actually good because it doesn't create artificial microtransactions. In another way, it's like worse because it's like microtransactions are baked into the game now.
Yeah, they're fundamental. I feel like at that point.
So I think that the biggest change that I would make is I'd take all those community people who were supposed to make the game safe and fun and reduce toxicity, and I would add them to the fundamental game loop instead of tacking them on at the end.
Right.
So if we're thinking about, let's say, like, you know, so I think a good example of this was when World of Warcraft made instances. So back, like, I maybe I've requested this, but I think like back in the day, like you'd have a server and you'd have like some spawn, and then people would be competing for the spawn. It was fucking frustrating because like, you know, like there are 300 people that are trying to get this drop or whatever. And so somewhere along the way, they were like, okay, we're going to create an instance where like, you know, everyone can get their own thing. Like, I think that's something that reduces toxicity in the game. So they're like fundamental mechanics, which I think you can bake in. A couple of really simple things I would do to reduce toxicity. One is that, because I think a lot of people who build these things don't understand basic psychology, and that's not what their background is in, but that's the problem. So one is that there needs to be a much shorter time span between bad behavior and consequence. So right now, the way that the gaming industry works is like, I get reported in a game of Dota 2. What happens?
Nothing forever.
A couple weeks go by. It gets served up to some community person who now they have a community-driven like judging system, right? And then like 3 weeks later, someone passes judgment and like bans me. And so I did something bad, and then last week I didn't do anything bad at all. And I log in and I'm banned for 30 days. And I'm like, so I don't correct behavior. I just get pissed.
Yeah, like, and you're not even sometimes not sure why you even got banned in the first place. You're like, what do I change?
Sometimes not sure. The majority of people are not given a reason for why they were banned.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, we're talking about behavioral change, but like imagine going to school and then like you go to school one day and you're like totally fine. And then like 42 days later, you go to school and they're like, detention. And you're like, for what? And they're like, we don't know. Detention.
And then they start logging onto League of Legends and saying slurs. That's what happens after.
But who knows, right? Because when I log on to League of Legends and I say slurs, there's no immediate feedback.
Right.
Right? They just replace it with asterisks.
Yeah.
And so there's like fundamentals of behavioral change where like, I don't know if you've got kids or not, but.
No, I'm only 29. Is that the age I should be having kids, Dr. K? Oh, no.
I mean,
Did my parents talk to you before the stream?
I mean, are your parents giving you a flack around this kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, big time. Big time.
What's that like for you?
It's fun. I mean, it's fine. I get it. Because I think in Indian culture, they typically have kids a lot earlier than American culture. So, yeah, ton of flack, but I understand it. It'll happen when it happens.
Do you mind if I ask if you want to talk about gaming or you want to talk about this?
I'm down for whatever.
Because the thing is, I like talking to Indian people because I can't talk about this part with like other people. So like, are your parents like are you in a relationship?
No.
And are they like pressuring you to like?
Oh yeah, we met a girl. Yeah, I get all of that. Oh, we met someone. But do you actually love.
Do you have like a biodata that's out there?
Oh no, I hope I probably do, Dr. K. They're probably in certain WhatsApp groups. I mean, I can't control what they do, but I'm sure I have it out there, but not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and they've tried to make you one with your consent.
Yes.
And you refused.
No, they've tried. It's very subtle because I think they know I'm very westernized, so they'll be like, "Hey, there's this nice girl who lives in, Kolkata." Mom, stop.
So they're trying to find you women from the old country?
Yeah. Of course, to preserve our roots, our culture, Dr. K, of course.
And what have you told? How does that conversation go? Like, do you guys like sit down and like, do you tell them what you're interested in, or do they?
I just say, don't worry about it. As I said, that I'll take control. I mean, I'm comfortable with what's going on right now, and then they give me space.
And what's going on right now?
Mario Party speedrunning, Dr. K. What are you talking about? Of course, me and Ludwig and Mario Party duel.
And you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I because once again, I want to get to a place where I'm comfortable being in a relationship. And that's the way I think. I'm not actively seeking.
What would make you comfortable in a relationship?
Once I figure out my streaming prospect and see if it's something long term, and then I'll sort of get into relationship stuff.
What would it take for you to figure out whether streaming is something that's long term?
Oh, I have no idea. I should probably think about that. Probably like stable income for like 3 years.
Okay. So
I'm doing like an underwriting check.
I was about to say, like,
you can tell
so you're
if
basically
I have good credit.
I mean, usually with self-employed, it's 2 years. So
I'm very due diligent for myself.
Yeah.
But it's like that, and then make sure I'm emotionally available. I have less of a, because I live kind of a degenerate life. Like I wake up really late, I stream, so I just want to make sure if I'm in a relationship with someone, I can, I have my my schedule sorted out and stuff like that. I can make time for them and a little more time for myself and stuff like that. It's a scheduling conflict at the end of the day.
So, just to be honest, Squeex, that either sounds like a very, very mature thing or level S-class bullshit and defense mechanisms from your mind because you're trying to avoid something. It's like 3 years of underwriting before we tackle this problem. It's like, wow. Way to give ourselves a window to procrastinate.
Yeah. It's part of my nature. I can't help it.
And then you have to check that box first, which means that if the box doesn't get checked, so then the question is, like, 3 years from now, if you don't have stable income, is that a win or is that a loss?
Oh, that's a huge loss.
That's a huge loss.
Time to get a job. That's the way I think of it.
And then, but on the flip side, right? Like, if you don't have stable income, it's not like you have to start dating now.
Yeah, true. All right, I'll get in a relationship. I'll have kids.
I mean, I think you do you. It's just I don't, I'm really curious what, like what happened in my case was I was dating someone and then I kept it secret from my parents for years, like 5 or 6 years. We were like dating and stuff like that. And then, I like sometimes I think she kind of figured it out. So she would tell people like I had a friend. And then one day I told her, I was like, we're dating. And she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, she's my girlfriend. And then she was like, Does that mean y'all are gonna get married?
I have this exact same story. It's crazy you're saying that.
I'm telling you, we're the same person.
Yeah,
And I thought people were just memeing and racist
no,
because
this is
we're
more
both
the
brown.
multiverse. Yeah, no, I mean, we're actually identical.
Yeah, I mean, I failed out of college and all that good stuff too.
Wait, I didn't fail out of college. I failed out of high school.
I failed out of
Oh,
well,
you
sort of.
did?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
You still seem all right.
Yeah.
You
Likewise.
seem smart enough.
Likewise. But then I told
Oh wait,
her,
I
was like,
can't hear you. Did something
Testing?
cut out of my? Oh, now I can hear you.
okay.
Weird.
Maybe I just stopped talking. And just made.
I just
made
saw your mouth
movements.
move.
Yeah.
Well, then can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did your parents like ever bring up like, hey, we're looking at girls for you. Like, are you interested? And what was your criteria?
No. So the thing is, I told my parents I had a girlfriend when I was like 26. So that was like the age at which like that kind of stuff would normally start, right?
Yeah.
And then my mom was super confused, and she was like, does that mean y'all are gonna get married? And I was like,
Oh, gotcha.
Not necessarily. And then she was like I'm not. It wasn't computing. And she was like, so then what's the point of having a girlfriend if you're not gonna get married? Like, why would you do that? You know?
True.
And for her, it's like a train that you board. You know, you board it and then you hit one station and you just stay on the train. And so it was kind of confusing for them. And we got married. And actually, in retrospect, I got married like young. Like I thought it was, my parents were like, it is good age. Like they were cool with it and stuff.
Be a good son. Yeah.
So I got super lucky that way.
Yeah. Okay, because I have a story where in high school I had a girlfriend and my parents found out through my Facebook status. So that was
Amateur
tough.
mistake,
and they're like,
man.
I know, I messed up. I didn't think my parents were like Facebook literate, but then I brought my girlfriend over for dinner and they gave her the spiciest food, like the most Indian food of all time. Like the spiciest bhindi I've ever had, like spicy rajma, the most Indian stuff ever. And it was so funny to see my girlfriend, who was white, like it was like a test. And if she didn't finish her plate, sorry, not good enough for the family.
How do they feel about you dating a white girl?
Oh, I mean, I think you know the answer to that, Dr. K.
They drove her away with spicy bhindi and rajma.
Yeah, they did. Oh, I think you know about that. Weren't happy initially, but no, I feel like my parents have westernized, and it's been very cohesive, like between me and my parents. Like we teach each other a little bit.
That's cool.
So, because I think it's important to preserve a lot of like culturally Indian things, and also to introduce like Western ideas as well. So we're both changing for the better, hopefully.
And what kind of stuff are you teaching them about?
Oh, like, movies. No, like even understanding streaming. Like telling my parents that I'm being a streamer. That was a conversation that I was so nervous to have. Because like, can you imagine? Like, I was born in Mumbai. My mom is from New Delhi. Dad's from Jaipur. Like, hardcore Indian, like hardcore brown, like Arthi and all that. So telling them that I'm pursuing streaming or I'm going to be a streamer, that was a conversation that was a little wacky. It was a little wild.
How'd you do that?
Well, something that I learned that I was shocked by was bringing my parents into the streaming world, like making them feel involved. Like just talking about what I do, why people watch, making them understand like the vernacular of streaming, whether it's like subscriber or view count, etc., so that they can ask questions to feel like they're part of it a little bit. So I actually started streaming Mario living with my mom. So she would hear me say like the most unholy things in the other room, like the walls weren't that thick. And just telling her like, oh, I'm going to stream for 4 hours, 5 hours. And eventually when it started picking up, I think she understood that I'm a goofy guy to her as well. Like I do accents and impressions and stuff. So she was like, oh, this is right for you. Like this is a fit. So she was the one to say, don't worry about like looking for a job, like really pursue this when I got laid off. So I know, very enlightened Indian mom. So I love that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, dude. She sounds like an amazing woman.
Yeah, no, she's the best. So she's super understanding. So
I'd love to meet her one day.
yeah.
And then we can assure her that, you know, you have a good Indian friend.
We'll set it up.
Will little bit older, will be like older brother, and I'll talk some
Older-
sense
yeah.
into. You know,
She'll call you Uncle G or something.
No. I won't be an uncle, because like, do you have like older cousins and stuff? Who,
Yeah.
You know, you
Sure.
gotta have one of them like talk sense into you. So that
Yeah,
you can
I've been talked to by so many different people. Oh, we have middle management job at IBM. What's the big deal?
That's great.
I'm like, yeah, I'll pass. I'm sorry.
IT.
No, that's okay. I can barely get on Discord, let alone be someone's IT support, unfortunately. So job prospects are becoming lower and lower the further I stream. Unfortunately, my brain rot is too strong now.
So it sounds like your mom is like really supportive of your stuff. Well, how about your dad?
So my dad passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, but I started streaming before. But my dad's like been really supportive as well. He was more like strict because he was more of like a banking kind of guy. So that was like a lot of the reason why I got into banking. But he was super supportive as well, like throughout the whole thing.
Wow, cool. I'm sorry to hear that your dad passed.
That's all right.
Yeah, cool, man. This is so fascinating.
I know, it's cool to talk to a Indian person on Twitch.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Are you religious or spiritual?
So my mom is like super duper religious, like extremely religious, and I am not. But I think that's classic because I used to go to religious school called like Balvihar every week, and it was like me and a couple of Indian friends, and we'd only go because we wanted to have a sleepover and play Super Smash Bros. It's like it's like kind of a classic Western Indian religion. So I know about like, you know, the Ramayana and all that, but I'm not actively religious. Like I have a Ganesh statue sitting in some closet, you know, like just to
You could move it out of the
parents.
closet so it starts to bring the energies in.
Yeah, I can't do that. I don't want the Ganesh G to see what I say on stream.
Fair enough.
But then, no, and then in terms of spirituality, not really. I wouldn't consider myself spiritual, but I do enjoy like peace. You know what I mean? Like that's something I value over spirituality. Whereas like I'm very quiet throughout the whole day. I don't listen to music. I go on walks. I'm very like my own peaceful person until I go live. So I'm very peaceful in that sense. I try to quiet my mind, which I know a lot of spiritualism is about, but I don't really rely on like a transcendental meditation or anything. I just sort of like try to be quiet as much as possible.
You know, yeah.
Say it. You gotta say it.
I was just thinking about how some of these like spiritual traditions were like the original microtransaction. It's like pay this amount and then you can get this. Pay this amount and you could go premium. Pay this amount.
Yeah.
And by the way, every 6 months, like we've got a new battle pass. Like
exactly.
the guru is coming to town and they've got a special retreat.
Yeah, that's what's so funny is my Indian friend, he went to a silent retreat where he didn't talk for 2 weeks and he paid money to not talk. And then he comes home and he can't shut the fuck up. You know, he just loves his voice. I'm like, dude, you can shut the fuck up for free. You don't have to pay some guru to go somewhere. It's so simple. So yeah, I know all about those microtransactions of spiritualism. I feel like a lot of religions are a little microtransaction-y these days as well.
Yeah, some of them even have monthly fee. Tithing. Right?
Yeah, just subscribe down below.
Yeah.
Everyone, basically, Dr. K, everyone's turning into a YouTuber at the end of the day in every form, whether that's self-promo or whatever. I feel like every sector, eventually everyone's going to be a YouTuber.
It seems like it. We certainly have people of all. I mean, hell, we showed up on Twitch.
True.
I was out with my kids yesterday, and you know, there were some people who noticed who we were, and I have a feeling that they will grow up to be. Even one of my kids there's a summer camp in my area for how to become a YouTuber, and I was like, this is weird for 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious, like, who's running that camp?
Ninja. Ludwig.
Clearly. Right?
I don't know. Someone who did not make it on YouTube, I imagine.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Well, what do you... So I know there's that study where, like, most kids in the U.S. want to be YouTubers. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Have you read about that, like, in terms of career aspirations? And I think they ran the same poll in China, and everyone wanted to be, like, a scientist or an astronaut or something. Have you heard about that? Where in the U.S., most children want to be, like, influencers?
I mean, I don't know if it's most. I haven't seen. I've seen some studies that will cite that kind of thing. I haven't looked at those studies methodologically, so you've got to be super careful when someone says most. Like, sure. I find it hard to believe that 51% of people, like, if I were to just walk down to the local high school and ask ninth graders, what do y'all want to be? I find it hard to believe that 51% would say, or plus would say YouTuber or influencer. That being said, I think that it is probably the rising profession. So it's the thing that people 5 years ago didn't want to be that they want to be now. That I can totally believe that it's number one there.
Sure.
And we run into this a lot. Like, so we work a lot with parents and, you know, like their kids are addicted to video games. And now that's complicated because, you know, your parents used to say, like in my day and probably your day, maybe not, you know, and you were playing video games and your parents are like, you need to stop doing that so you can get a job.
Yes. Yeah.
And now kids have a response that they've never had before is, no, this is the most successful job I can have. This is the most lucrative job I can have. I can be a millionaire at the age of 21 and I don't even need to go to med school. Like, I don't need to do any of that. And I can make money faster.
Yeah, but what do we tell our aunties? You know, how are we gonna? That's what my mom would say. What do I tell my aunties?
Yeah,
what
it's challenging.
Like, yeah.
Even to this day, I don't know if my parents know how to describe what I do.
Yeah.
You know, it's like kind of like.
You're like Jimmy Fallon. That's what my mom said.
Like
you're like couple Sharma, is what they like, or whatever.
So I think a lot of kids want to be it, but I think a lot of kids don't really understand what it's like.
Yeah.
So I think being an influencer is a very stressful. I think there's some parts of the job that are not, that the human mind is not designed for, and the simplest of which is the responsivity to negative feedback.
Yeah.
So most human beings, like, even if 1,000 people hate you and 1,000,000 people like you, that doesn't, the brain doesn't think in terms of probabilities. That's why the lottery is a thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, I agree with that. Sorry, keep going.
The absolute amount of venom that you get, even if it's relatively low, is still absolutely damaging.
Sure. Well, I mean, I have a very very rambunctious chat room. I'm sure you're like a very how do I describe them? They like to be heard is what I would say. So like from the outside, a lot of people are like, wow, this chat is crazy. Like they're saying he's bald, you know, he's this, he's that. But the way that I look at it, and which is why you know, I look at it as a chat, no chatter or nobody on the internet really hates you. Like they want to get your attention in any way possible. And as like a young shit poster myself, I understand that inclination of being young and wanting someone to read my message. So like, I don't see it as negativity as much as the need to be heard. And if there's one thing as a streamer I understand the most is my need to be heard, is they share that same desire themselves. So it's almost like I'm openly performing and so are they. Do you know what I mean? So I don't just trust like negative or toxic chat comments because I think they're just touching into the inclination that I have, which is the need to perform.
Squeex, that is a very enlightened perspective. So I'm super curious how you kind of got there, but what I'm hearing, I think this is hard. So this is a skill that we'll try to teach streamers or other people, which is when someone engages in a behavior, there's sort of the absolute behavior, and then there is a way to disarm the impact of that behavior by understanding where the person is coming from.
Sure.
So like even, I mean, we get trained this formally in psychiatry where people will like be verbally abusive to us because they want their Adderall, and it's like, if you lost it, I can't prescribe it again.
Sure.
And so we learn how to like understand that, okay, when the person is venomous, like here's what their experience is, here's where they're coming from, like to try to understand where this is coming from. I've heard very few people speak like you do. Most streamers will just get hit by it, you know?
Sure.
How did you figure that out?
Well, I figured it out because once I was streaming and someone said something that hurt my feelings, and I went on a walk and thought about why it hurt my feelings, and I came like the internal conclusion that it's because deep down I was insecure about it. So like whenever someone says something that hurts me, it's most likely because it's something that I need to work on myself in terms of self-doubt about who I am. So like if someone came into my chat and was like, "You're a fucking elephant," I'd be like, "I don't give a fuck." I know I'm not an elephant. But if someone came into my chat and was like, "You're a phony streamer that's not funny, that got lucky because you collabed," like then it hits a little harder because there's a voice in my mind that's like, "Oh fuck, is that true?" So just like after getting my feelings hurt once and thinking about it, I'm like, I understand that insults can only sting if you yourself believe in some modicum of truth of it on your inside. So after just thinking about that, I was like, well, then why would they say the insult? They don't, they could just type whatever. And that's when I came to the conclusion, because they want to be heard just like I do. So that's sort of how I arrived.
Wow, that's fantastic, dude. I completely agree. We really are the same person. This is wild.
It's crazy.
So it's because I think a lot of people, speaking to what you were saying earlier about how self-help is kind of like distracting yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think we're seeing this trend as well, where people are, when I feel hurt by something, what is happening increasingly is that the way I'm going to deal with that hurt is by making the other person stop saying it.
Sure.
Instead of recognizing that the only reason it can hurt is if I'm insecure.
Yes.
And if I fix the insecurity, I will become immune. It's like I've got a star.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I can touch anything in the world. Instead of it hurting me, I own it.
It becomes a weapon. You can use that. That's what I found. Like it becomes a thing in your arsenal, is what you were insecure about.
So I think what's happening is we're like giving up our stars. Like we're not working on ourselves. We're not solving our own insecurities, and we're just sort of like, in order to take the pain away, which is another thing that's happening, is our society is becoming increasingly intolerant to pain, discomfort of any kind.
Yeah.
Like boredom is like, oh my God.
Yeah. Open TikTok.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it.
Not just open TikTok. I'm watching something on TV. I need to open TikTok anyway.
Yeah.
Or I'm on TikTok and now I need to like open up a Twitch stream.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Like Subway Surfers and Counter-Strike and Twitch and all that at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's wild. I'm super impressed, Squeex, by just how much. Like I studied a lot of this stuff and understand a lot of these things, but you seem to have really like introspected and discovered a lot of this. Makes me really wonder about your karma.
Yeah. Oh, I know a lot about that. No, I don't know.
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, so I know like the colloquial way of karma, which is basically like the Western idea where you do good and you receive good. Is that the way you're intending to use it?
No, I was referring to something else. So in some of the, well, yes, same concept, but I think that understanding, in my opinion, is very incomplete. Mm-hmm. And also, it's not that that good will necessarily happen to you like anytime soon. So I mean, it's do something good and something good will happen to you. It can be something as simple as I'm going to eat a salad for lunch so that I don't have like a food coma at like 3 p.m.
Sure.
So like that's like do good, receive good. Like I don't think that's anything wild, and that's also karmic. But a lot of people think that like, okay, if I help 1,000 homeless people, then like I'm gonna win the lottery. Like I don't think that's how it works.
Damn.
The good that you create by doing a good karma for the homeless people is like usually for the homeless people, can also be for you in terms of now I've done something good for another human being so I can feel good about myself. But that's, but in your case, what I'm talking about is it's interesting because some of the stuff that you're saying, based on some systems that I've studied, depends on whether you buy this stuff or not,
Sure.
is indicative of you doing a lot of spiritual practice in a past life. So it's kind of like, why are you able to come to these conclusions naturally? It's like muscle memory. It's like you played Super Mario 64 and some of that stuff is baked in, so you can play Mario Party and you can be pretty good at it, even though you've never played Mario Party before.
Sure. Well, I also did acid in college, which I think was was quite a ride. It was quite shaky, but even that was not long lasting. But that's when I sort of learned that like your ego is very flexible, and your sense of reality is very loose.
So it could be meditation in a past life, could be acid.
Could be acid, but only once, never again. It was a little too much for me.
And did you?
Yeah.
What was your experience with that like?
Well, me and my friends did acid with the intention of being meditative and trying to better ourselves. So like I was friends with a lot of like Indian people, so like med schools and med students, engineers, and all that. And I feel like we had this quiet noise in our head that we're wasting our time. So we took acid to try to feel something, and it was I was very nervous to do it, but it was definitely a formative moment in my brain where we were going on a walk. We took acid together. I knew everybody. I don't recommend acid for anybody at home, by the way.
Nor do I.
Yeah, but it was the first time in my life where I realized like the way I see the world is completely divergent to the way someone else sees the world. Or it's not. It's my perspective is so unique, and everyone has such a unique perspective that, that if reality is so shaky for me, it's probably shaky for everyone else, and we're probably just a collection of our experiences, like put together into our head. So how could you hate somebody just because they've experienced something different than you? That wasn't their choice, So it was definitely a trip, but it was. I mean,
what do you mean by reality is shaky?
Well, yeah, because when I was on acid, you see like crazy, illusion-y type things, but also your brain like changes a little bit. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost, what I would describe it as, Dr. K? It's almost like self-induced psychosis in a way that can be beneficial. Because you see your sense of self a little bit different. And I think it's very similar to like the yogis and monks who meditate for a long time. I know, and you probably know more about that than I do, but for gamer terms, like an FPS becomes a third person shooter where your vision kind of expands. Instead of seeing yourself as an individual, you see yourself as a whole in your surrounding. I know it sounds like crazy. It sounds like such nonsense when it's coming out of my mouth, but that's what it felt like.
So I'm a little bit confused by why you wouldn't recommend it, because everything that you're saying sounds great. Like you can have compassion for other human beings and you start to get perspective on yourself. These all sound like good things.
Yeah, but I don't recommend it because it's sort of the way I see it. It's a very temporary feeling. And if you rely on a substance to get that feeling, I don't think it's true. And that's me having a judgment on acid itself. I think those feelings of compassion should and probably be like found through your own work instead of like a substance.
And so you did it once, but it sounds like you've continued to work to cultivate compassion or empathy.
Yeah, I just try to be more thoughtful than I probably was before.
Okay. Yeah, so the reason I wouldn't recommend it, because you make it sound good. And I think the real challenge, the first thing to understand is that the stories of positivity tend to spread. The stories of disability tend to not spread.
Yeah.
Right? So like if
It's
someone
scary.
like is like, hey,
Someone has
I
a
did
bad trip.
acid and it fucked me up and I have PTSD, like they'll say that and no one is going to be surprised. Everyone's going to be like, you know, if you're like, I drank a glass of milk and I have PTSD, everyone's going to be like, wait, what happened?
What the fuck? Yeah.
How is that even possible? Like, what's like, is milk dangerous now? And no one told us because of GMOs and whatever.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, I mean, and this is the downside, is that like, I think a lot of people don't hear these stories, but like I do, because these are the people that wind up in my office after a bad trip or in the emergency room. And like, you know, they really fuck themselves up or hurt themselves. You know, I once took care of a patient who took acid and jumped out of a 3-story window and like, you know, broke their legs and their hips and like probably can't walk normally again. I think they had a good prognosis in the sense that they would probably be able to walk, but it's like, you know,
that's so scary.
You just don't hear about these things. Like you hear all about the positive stuff and the documentaries on Netflix and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that a lot of people are not really like consciously aware of is like from a safety perspective, you don't really know what you're getting. Fucking everything is laced with fentanyl nowadays and like can kill you. And then the last thing is that even in these sort of historic situations like shamanism and peyote or whatever, there is usually a lot of like competence and expertise in how to take the psychedelic and like safeguards. And one of the worst things that I've seen is that a lot of times people who are suffering or are actively in a depressive episode or something like that will take it because they want to have this transformative experience. They want to get out of their head. But usually when you're not feeling well, it's like very bad. It kind of enhances or exacerbates like whatever you're feeling.
No. And also one of my friends had a really bad trip. So that stopped us completely. We like took
What
care
happened
of
to
him.
your friend?
He just started like thinking we were against him and like, you know, we were really scared about him. He just kept looping like in his head. He wasn't really making logical sense. I think he like went out into a full-blown psychotic episode. So yeah, we took him to the hospital and like that sort of scared us forever. And
Okay, good.
well, we're not going to do anything. We're going back to being good Indian boys. Studying for our MCATs and stuff like that. But yeah, so that yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
that scared us a lot too. So
Yeah, you know, just even in the course of our conversation, it's interesting that people would walk away from this conversation having heard how it helped you become empathic and all this stuff. And that part about your friend being taken to the hospital, like that, if I hadn't asked, like,
yeah, I wouldn't have mentioned it.
Right?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys did it once.
Only once.
Yeah, so you did it once, and one of y'all wound up in the hospital. How many of y'all were there?
4.
Right, so 25% chance of hospitalization is like, I think honestly that's like, I mean that sounds high even to me, but I think that's the thing. No one ever tells that story.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but and then also to add to that, it wasn't the most important part of development. It was just like the smallest of pieces. So I think you can reach like compassion or whatever without acid, easy, like way better than.
What would you say are the important parts of your development? What happened most important?
Working in banking was probably the most important part of my development because I feel like more valuable than finding a good job is finding a job you fucking hate, to value your time. And when you start streaming, you value a lot more by doing something you hate every day. And looking at the people around you and seeing how miserable they are and stuff like that. Like, and I was streaming during the time, so if you look back at those VODs, I'm like a shell. I am so dead on the inside. But that was extremely valuable to see that. And going through a journey of things that didn't work was probably extremely helpful for me as well.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. What did you hate about banking?
I didn't like the trade of time for money. And I did not like, I didn't agree with that. I think I joined banking for the status. And once I achieved that status, I was like, now what? You know? And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get a promotion. I got the promotion. Then I'm like, now what? So I felt like it was a never ending, infinite treadmill. And then the same thing where I'd see a lot of my peers who were there for 20 plus years, they looked miserable. Like they hated it. They spent more time at work than like with anybody else. That's all they talked about. That's all they thought. And that's when I hit like my breaking point. I was like, I can't do this anymore. So
What,
I
what was
quit.
so intolerable about the job?
Um, I think what was intolerable about the job was a sneaking suspicion that what we did not matter to anybody. That we weren't creating, and I think this is true in finance. Finance can be summarized by moving money from one area to another. And that feels so, no matter what, whether it's accounting, investment banking, wealth management, whatever. And I think these financial firms have these lengthy mission statements basically to be like, no, you're helping. It's like a religion. We're making the place a better whatever. And I think it was that sneaking suspicion in my head that I'm just not adding value to anybody's life. And that's when I was like, well, fuck that. I want to do
I'm
something.
going to start playing Super Mario 64 on the internet to fix that problem.
Exactly. But from a very early point, I loved trying to be funny. I loved trying to entertain. And that gave me a sense of purpose very early on, before anyone started watching. Like, ask my first few viewers. Like, it's always been me just trying to be funny. And that's something that brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction and fulfillment.
Yeah, and it sounds like it brings a lot of people joy too. So even though that sounds ironic, it sounds like you're actually are making the world a better place by speedrunning Super Mario 64 and getting crushed by Ludwig.
Oh, don't say crushed. Oh, no. I will come back. I will beat him.
He's got 20 minutes on you?
Yeah, but it's Mario Party, Dr. K. Like, it's all random.
Okay, it's all random, right.
So it's all random. He got lucky, and whenever I mess up, it's because of bullshit.
Of course.
When he does great, it's because of RNG. You can't shatter that belief in me, otherwise I can't continue.
Any true gamer.
Yeah, exactly. I still have my toxicity in me preserved.
I'm stuck at this rank because my teammates are bad.
Yeah, and because, I have to water my cat, there's lag, etc.
Yeah, ping, lag.
Ping, yeah, exactly. Well, I actually have a question for you related to streaming.
Sure.
What are, you've talked to so many streamers throughout the years. What is like a strongly held belief that many streamers share that you found to be like not true? And it could be like something that they believe, oh, if I stream this many hours, or if I do this, my viewership will increase, or like, what's a common trend that you think is total bullshit?
So I know this may sound, I'm going to answer your question, but I'd toss out not really a caveat, but just a different way of thinking about things. So I think if someone has a belief, there is some truth to that to begin with. So
Sure.
if someone says like, oh, I think this is true, like they believe that because that's been their experience. So I don't think anything is bullshit like that. But I do think there are incorrect conclusions that a lot of people come to. And the number one incorrect conclusion is the balance of power within streaming. So a lot of times people who get caught up in streaming are responding to things on the outside, and they feel controlled by metrics, numbers, whatever. So it's like you're playing like this game of tennis, but like you control every single ball. And I think a lot of times people will try to solve problems outside of themselves. Whereas I think the biggest mistake that people consistently make is that most problems need to be solved internally. Like if someone is like, toxic in your chat, or like you get into beef with someone, they're always like looking to the outside. They're like, this person, like, how do I own this person? This person leaked DMs. I need to leak DMs. Like, I'm going to like write a twit longer. Like they're wrote a twit. Like, and there is some amount of practical damage control and responding and stuff like that, which needs to be done. But I think most of the battles that we fight externally are actually like we can truly win internally. And you kind of alluded to this when if someone says something that hurts your feelings, how can I make it so that my chat, my mods are like faster at like banning these people, which like you can objectively want to be good at like banning people who are toxic. Sure. But a lot of the stuff that people struggle with is actually within their control, and they feel out of control. And so in life in general, I'd say the biggest mistake that people make is that you feel out of control because there are circumstances in your life that are pulling you a particular way. But what people miss out on is that anytime there's a circumstance that acts on you, you react to that thing. And it is when you get controlled by your reaction that you lose power. So if you say something and then I can't control whether you make me feel angry or hurt. Like it may hurt, but then the way that I respond to that hurt is within my control. And oftentimes what gets us out of control in life is not how we feel when something happens. It's our inability to control ourselves when there is a response.
Sure.
So giving into the anger, giving in, and now like I'm never going to talk to you again, or I'm not going to show up, or I'm going to think about, okay, like if I go to this thing, is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? Instead of like, if he wants to show up, he can show up. And if I want to show up, I can show up. If he treats me like an ass, I will fight back. And that'll be what we do. You know, but a lot of times people will surrender control over their lives to their own reactions.
Sure. And also to contextualize people's comments. I remember once on Twitter, I got a DM that was like a death threat. It was like, you're going to die, do this, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, it's my first ever death threat. I click on this guy's profile, click on his YouTube, and he's like some fucking kid doing Fortnite builds. And in that context, I'm like, oh my God, it's so adorable. You know, I said something to piss off this young kid, and he's like, die. I don't know. Just putting that into perspective, I was like, it's like looking at a puppy shitting in the house. Like, hey, come on. Instead of like some grown-ass guy. So I think oftentimes on the internet, whenever you read a mean comment, you think it comes from someone who's like, you know, working, you know, someone who's like your age. But oftentimes it's just a fucking 12-year-old or something who's just testing the waters and learning about themselves a little bit. So
did you respond to the death threat?
Nah, I think I gave him a thumbs up or something. Something like that.
Yeah.
But no response from me, unfortunately.
But yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is that people don't acknowledge how much control they have. And kind of like you were sort of saying that, you know, when you're in a circumstance that treats you poorly, it's like hard to be your best self. I think streamers oftentimes, and bankers too, for that matter, there was one point where 30% of my patients were in finance. And I think people underestimate the power that is within them.
Sure.
So even in terms of promotion and stuff, like you can work hard towards promotion, but you can also acknowledge that, okay, like this is something we saw in banking. So I'll give you just an example. So sometimes you're in a situation where like, I really want to get promoted. And so you work really hard to try to get promoted. And there's like 3 other people that are at your level and they're going to hire, you know, they're going to promote one of y'all and you don't get the promotion. And then you feel really bad and you're like, oh my God, what could I have done better? Or what could I have done better? Like I worked so hard and these people and there's favoritism, and you get really all bent out of shape. And what we tend to find, and this is sort of what we try to do in like career coaching as well, is like, this is a situation where you work really hard. Do you bring a lot of value to the table? Like be objective about it. Your the promotion is independent of the value that you bring. Right? Yeah. And so if your value is high, then you're at a place that does not recognize it, what can you do about that? And oftentimes what I find is that, so for example, 30% of people who come into my office, not the same people in finance, but this is a separate statistic, usually make a career change within like 12 to 18 months. Yeah. And it's like, I'm unhappy in my job. Teach me how to be happy in my job.
Quit your job.
And then we learn about, okay, what is it that makes you happy in life? Do you want to move towards that? Will that work in your job? And for 70% of people, they learn how to be happier in their job. They're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to focus on. So I think just in general, people don't realize that, like, you know, even in terms of promotion, we'll get so bent out of shape when we don't get something that we work towards. But if we're really valuable, you can even apply for a job somewhere else.
Sure. Well, I mean, I would even say like vying for promotion is like, I've been that guy, and it's not, even if you get it, it's not a road to happiness. It's all, I find it to be quite like really fleeting. You'll be super excited for like maybe a week, and then instantly you adjust and are like, okay, like what's next? I think when people try to go for promotions, it's for the promise of a better like future, because their present condition is so bad. So it's almost like, why do you want a promotion? Is it for the money or is it for something else? Things like that might be a harder question to answer.
Well, I think for a lot of people, kind of like you said, I think for a lot of people, the reason that they go for promotion is because life is actually a sandbox game with no main quest.
Yeah.
And so what people end up doing is filling up their life with side quests because someone is telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like there could be a super long side quest chain like banking where presumably like, you know, it's like one of these fucking quest chains that you do something and like the reward is kind of shit.
Yeah.
Even though you're like running around and talking to like 15 NPCs.
Right.
And then like someone's like, yeah, but wait till the end of the quest chain. Like,
yeah, some crazy reveal.
Right? And then like there's like a really good piece of loot at the end.
Yeah.
And then like you know, like you get this piece of like epic loot, like you get this epic sword and you're like 62 years old.
Yeah.
You know, you've accumulated so many debuffs along the way. And then like the servers shut down.
Yeah, you're back
like 4 years.
Fucked up. Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck? I've been grinding for this sword for 40 years and then the server shuts down like 4 years after that. Like it was kind of good, but I was like fucking playing on ping and and you know, like it's
that's
like
so funny because I feel like that's like the same anxiety that a lot of Indian immigrants have as well. Like so much anxiety, at least in like my family and families like who I know are also Indian, are like planning for the future. Oh, we just want you to do that so in the future you can be like this, or like, oh, we want med school to secure your future, but like it can be fucking miserable for people. So
yeah, so I think a big part of that is like the world they grew up in was different. Planning for the future worked in their day. And there was a big difference in terms of outcomes for people who plan for the future or don't plan for the future. Mm-hmm. And I think the other big thing was that like survival was not guaranteed. Like, I don't know about, you know, how old your parents are, but, you know, when my parents were growing up, like infant mortality was still like 20%.
Yeah.
Right. And so like survival was not guaranteed. And like there was a big difference. Like people would starve. You know, that was a day and age where more people died of starvation than obesity. And now it's like it's a whole different ballgame. Like, you know, I don't know about you, but I was like forced to finish all the food on my plate. And they were packing away calories, packing away calories, packing away calories. You got to eat.
You have to have at least 4 rotis. Like,
right?
Like
and I don't think they like that was from a day when people were starving to death.
Yeah.
And my grandmother grew up and there was like rationing in Mumbai. Like you could not. So this is kind of wild. Like people don't understand this. Mm-hmm. Like right now, what limits what I buy is what money I have. Sure. But like she grew up in a world where like you couldn't buy sugar. There was no sugar available to buy. It just didn't exist. You got like 1 kg a month and that was all the sugar you get. Doesn't matter how much money. I mean, maybe if you have a ton of money, you can get it on the black market and shit like. But that too, it's like you gotta go to your sugar dealer, right, to like get this like illicit
the white
sugar.
Powder.
Yeah, the white powder.
Your tea.
You know.
Yeah, I know it's different. Like my grandpa was part of the rationing too. He was like in the Indian Army, and ever since you know, whenever I saw growing up with him, he emphasized like every last grain of rice and like taking real ownership of everything you own. Like extreme organization, and that's like a pretty good thing to probably have. Yeah,
but I think that those kinds of truisms about how to live life were like for a different game.
Yeah.
It's like the world has changed. Like we've released Life 2.0 and more people are dying of obesity. Money does not correlate with happiness and security in the way that it used to 100 years ago or 200 years ago, or you need more of it.
Yeah.
Or there were some assumptions around money which are no longer there. So like even making 6K, I mean 6 figures, for example, but like with the way that rents are and things like that, it's like different.
It's all relative.
Yeah. So some of these like strats, like it's like an old meta. Like there's been a huge patch to the game of life.
Yeah.
And everyone's like operating on this old meta kind of strategy, like finish your food no matter what. Right.
Sure.
And I'll even have parents. Let me just finish this one last thought. And then I'll have parents in my neighborhood who are kind of like my age, and they like that. Like their kid doesn't want to eat 4 rotis, and so what they'll do is they'll give him the iPad to distract him, so that they can squeeze the 4th roti in. And what they're literally training this kid to do is ignore his body's signals for "I'm full" and use technology to pack away extra calories.
Yeah.
And here on Twitch, we're trying to stop that.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, how do I stop eating that 5th slice of pizza when I'm watching Squeex go for it?
Yeah.
And he's going for it, and I'm eyeing this fifth slice, and I'm like, it's kind of too much, but he's going for it, so I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to just mindlessly eat it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, I was going to ask Dr. K, do you find like Indian immigrants have higher cases of anxiety, or because I know there's like a stigma in the Indian culture regarding mental health about like, oh, you must be broken. That's why you're asking for help. But like, do you find there's a lot more? Because I talk to Indian uncles and like my aunties and stuff, and I just want to like be like, get help, because there's so much anxiety and nerves by the way they talk. And it's almost like they don't know how to express it, so they offload it onto their children. And then that anxiety is inherited. But in your experience, do you find that immigrants are more susceptible to like anxiety and depression, or?
So, great question. You're going to get an academic answer. So the short answer is no. So generally speaking, I think if you look across populations, basically all human beings epidemiologically have the same level of anxiety or depression on average. And you can kind of say it's like 1 out of 3 people really struggles with it. That being said, we know that immigrants specifically, so anytime you have an immigrant that goes from one country to another, the risk of mental illness goes up. So in that sense, it's true if you're looking specifically at immigrants. But I don't think you're asking, I don't actually think your question is about immigrants. I think your question is about cultures where mental illness is not, right? So technically immigrants, yes, but generally speaking, no. What I will say is that now that people know I'm a psychiatrist, it was wild. So when I first started, when I told people I was like interested in becoming a psychiatrist, my grandmother was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And she was like, "That's not really for us." And people are like, "Okay, if you're with mentally ill people all day, doesn't that make you mentally ill?" And it's like, not really, actually. It's kind of like, if you're treating cancer all day, it doesn't give you cancer.
Yeah.
And thankfully, mental illness is not, for the most part, contagious, but it can sort of be contagious, which maybe I should make a video about one day. But what I would say is that, so once people figured out I'm a psychiatrist, people who I've known my entire life will like approach me in like clandestine locations. Like, if I'm at some party where there's like an Indian uncle and I walk out to my car, like someone will follow me out to my car and they'll be like, "Hey, I've got this problem." Like at weddings, I get approached all the time when I'm like on my way to and from the car. Like that's when it happens. People will like,
you're like a mental health drug dealer. It's like,
absolutely.
Hey,
it's
like I have some anxiety. Don't tell.
They're like, what's going on here? Like someone approached me recently and they're like, my son was at a play date and he was playing with a boy and the boy took off his clothing and then my son took off his clothing. Do you think he's going to grow up and be gay? Like, they just have no idea. Like, they're like, they can't ask anyone else. Like, they don't, and so it's bizarre. So I don't think it is technically more common, but I think that there is it is way more common than people realize, because the rate of like mental health problems in the Indian community is like 0 by official statistics. But I think it's closer to 30%, but it's not like 80%.
Sure.
The other last complicating thing is that I think for a long time, cultures have used religion or spirituality as a buffer against mental problems. And it works to a certain, it's not like a treatment, which I think a lot of people mistake. Like I don't think that, God can fix it. But we absolutely have evidence-based spiritual practices that when you study them from an evidentiary standpoint do offer concrete and verifiable benefits for mental health. So in the Indian culture, like we'll go to like the temple and we'll do prayer and we'll like meditate and like some of those like cleansing rituals and stuff. There's a healthy amount of placebo thrown in, but like placebo works.
Can you give me an example of a practice? Like, do you mean like prayers and things like that could have like beneficial? Is there any evidence for like? Because I remember when I was a kid, I had to like memorize all like the Indian prayers, and I'd get a sticker every time I'd recite it.
So
I was like, this is bullshit.
That's fucking dumb. So here's the stupid thing. Okay, so you can make an argument that memorizing prayers as a child stretches and strengthens your frontal lobe, and if your frontal lobe is strengthened and stretched, then you will do better in life. So there's a stretch there, but you can kind of do it. So since I'm forcing myself to concentrate, I have impulses. I'm regulating those impulses because I have to do this fucking boring thing. It teaches me how to regulate impulses. If I'm better at regulating impulses and I feel angry, I'm not going to let that get out of control. I'm going to focus on what's important to me. I'm not going to let my life fall apart because of anger. So there's some data there. But I think the thing that pisses me off is that people memorize all these prayers, but even the people who are teaching the kids don't actually understand or apply it to their life.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's bizarre. It's like they're like, memorize this stuff, but they don't actually practice, like, I don't know if you know what this is, but like vairagya. You know, you'll have all these people who will like fast, but even fasting, they like kind of miss the point. So they're like, okay,
they're doing it just to go through the motions, it feels like.
Well, so they're like, okay, the more I fast, the more desireless I will become. They don't realize that fasting is modeled off of yogis, who the reason that they can fast easily is because they don't give a shit what they eat. The desirelessness comes first. And so eating healthy is a consequence of like a healthy relationship with food. And then people are sort of like trying to go through the motions, and they're trying to like reverse engineer the spiritual growth or personal growth. And this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about self-help, where it's like, I'm going to go through the motions of stoicism and it's going to make me happier in life. But you can't go through the motions. You're like sort of missing the point, which I see a lot in our culture.
Yeah. And this might be a stretch. I mean, I see that on Twitch too.
Oh, absolutely.
People come up with these crazy crackpot theories. They're like, if I push out this many YouTube videos and do this much, my stream will grow. I'm like, is everything going okay? Like, what? I don't know if that's true. And I think it feels good to do stuff like that, but it doesn't necessarily solve your problems.
I do think that a lot of this stuff, like if you go to like a puja or something, that there's like, a social capital aspect, which is good for mental health. Yeah. It's like these kind of third spaces which are missing right now in our society, where people like get together and there's some amount of socialization. I do think there's some wisdom there, that there's like a lot of good stuff there for people who are paying attention. Yes. And then there are some practices. So I think that pretty consistently, a lot of religious practices are good at sublimating the ego. So this experience that you had with psychedelics, like this sort of idea of a higher power, and there's been data that's sort of kind of demonstrated this with AA, for example. Like, what's the purpose of the higher power? It's because if you look at an addict, okay, so how can religion help with addiction? So some people think it's like it's the God who is helping with addiction, but that's not probably how it works. I mean, we don't have definitive data that doesn't exist, but what really is happening is when you do something like go to AA and you have an addiction and they're talking about a higher power, the reason that people stay addicted is because I think I can control it. And as long as I think I'm in control, the addiction is in control. So how do you, because they're like, I can handle it, I can control it, I can stop anytime I want to, and then they keep using. So what does AA do? AA says, you're not in control. And if you're not in control, then your like addictive mind like can't trick you into like feeling okay with using today, because you're like, I fucking can't control this. That means that I can't use it. And then the addictive mind is like, no, you can control it. You've got it under control. Like you've got it under control. And not only do you have it so under control, if anyone says that marijuana is a problem, you fucking argue with them. You show them the evidence, you teach them, you be the example. Right? And like you fucking show them that you have it under control. Like,
facts and logic,
right? Like you fight that battle until the bitter end, because you're in control, baby. Right? And they're all fucking wrong. You tell them about all these people out in Silicon Valley that are getting high every day and they run billion-dollar companies. And how dare someone tell you that pot is a problem? Yeah. Fucking, I'm no different from Squeex. He fucking sits there and streams Super Mario for 9 hours a day, and I sit around and I play Mario for 9 hours a day of League of Legends and get high, and like I'm totally fine.
You're totally fine. Copium.
Right? Yeah. So addiction really has a lot to do with, it tricks you into thinking you're in control. So when you go through some of this, like, okay, like I actually don't have control in life, it can be incredibly freeing. And even if you look at things like social anxiety or people who are like in dependent or codependent relationships, like, how do I get this person? How can I manipulate this person into treating me well? Just people who are like dependent are actually manipulative. They're like, they have no power in the relationship, but they're like, how do I like change? How do I get this person to like me?
Sure.
You can't get this person to like you.
Yeah, and then you end up agreeing with whatever they say. You're like, oh, you like country music? I like country music, in a manipulative way, just to like be like, maybe this will make them like me or whatever.
Absolutely. So if you look at a lot of religions, what they'll do is remove that. They'll sort of say, okay, like it's up to God. It's up to God. You know, it's up to God. And once you leave it up to God, then it's kind of like, okay, so I shouldn't bother like trying to get this person to like fall in love with me or marriage. Like, oh, like when is Squeex going to get married? It is in his karma. Don't stress. It is in his karma. If it is going, it is going to happen. I guarantee your parents. I can walk in for tea time and I can say it's going to happen when it happens. It's his karma, and they're going to be like, instead of being traumatized and terrified about your future, they're going to feel like emotionally reassured. Right? So
they would.
You know, that's how it works.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, that's funny. Yeah. Because even like during grief, I think this is one a big time where people look at towards, oh, it's even like in Western culture, they'll be like, whatever should happen will happen is basically another way of being like God's in command or like some higher power. This is part of the script. I think that can be very reassuring for some people as well, where like the same principles apply. Is when someone close to you passes.
Yeah, so I mean, people will come. I think there's a lot of good mechanisms there, but they're not exclusive to religion. Once you understand the psychology of it, I think you can somewhat duplicate them. But yeah,
fair.
Great question, man.
Thanks.
So I think we should maybe wrap up in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so. Do you have any last kind of thoughts or questions before we do wrap up?
No, actually nothing specifically. I think I've asked you everything that was on my mind. Do you have any questions for me that are outstanding as well, or anything?
I mean, so I'm just a little bit curious, like what's next for you? Like what are we? You turned out to be a lot more decent and wholesome than I was expecting.
What do you mean wholesome?
I don't know.
What were you expecting? Like a toxic?
I've seen one clip of you.
What was the clip?
It was you yelling at your children because you weren't Dr. K. You're like,
oh, something.
But I think you were. I think they. I don't. I guess I don't think you have kids. I think they.
I don't have kids.
Other adults that you were streaming with.
Oh yeah, that probably sounds about right. I think that was
I'm a huge
Everyone
fan,
calls me Dr. K. So.
That's good. They're not wrong.
We're the same person. Racism aside.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad it was so.
Maybe people who stereotype have something right for a reason.
Oh God, here we go. Cancellation tour, Dr. K. He supports the stereotype. I don't know. Unhealthy Gamer GG has a pretty good nickname for me, I think. But people say that you are the version of me that went to a good school, and I had to stick with UC Davis. So whenever I look at you, I'm like, you know, this is what could have been me, but instead I'm playing Mario Party against fucking Ludwig. So.
And I look at you and think the same thing. If I had actually had the balls to quit my profession and become a full-time streamer, then I would be where you are.
Yeah, or got fired. You know, one or the other.
One or the other. Yeah. And so we're like pieces from a parallel universe that coexist.
That's right. It's the multiverse.
But so what's next for you, Squeex?
What's next is I'm going to continue doing this. Continue doing streams that I think are fun and things that I like doing, and hopefully I continue having people watch that are entertained by it. So that's what's next, is just continuing my routine. I'm pretty happy in life right now, so I'm just try to keep the train rolling and try to find different things to satisfy my what my interests are.
Awesome, man. And can you just tell us where we can find you across the internets?
Sure. Twitch TV Squeex. Squeex15 on Twitter. And yeah, that's it.
What does Squeex mean?
When I was like 12, we're like the same age about, but when I was really young, I used to play Counter-Strike Source on a team. And this is way before people had microphones. So I remember driving to Walmart, buying myself like a mic, and talking for the first time to my team. And there were a bunch of like 16, 17-year-olds, so their voices developed, and I was just a little squeaker. So forever, since that point, I've been Squeex or Squeaky. and it just has stuck with me. So I've been Squeex forever.
Okay, so I've just received a request. Are you open to introductions? Wait, what? What was for who? I think someone is trying to set you up. So like the Indians
No, God.
who have apparently been watching the stream over the course of this stream. We have received a communication from.
I have some friends. Does he want to meet them?
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm waiting for my karma. It's all part of God's plan.
There are friends who are ready to meet hot singles in your area who are balding a little bit and used to have a stable profession.
Yeah, and my biodata is fucked. All right.
I'm taking all of this as a yes. Is that correct?
This is being interpreted as a yes.
No, it's a no. It's all part of God's plan.
I think he's saying. I think he's saying no, but does no mean no?
No, don't wink. I see that. No,
I think we're interpreting this as yes.
Yeah. You really are like Indian parents already. Like,
no, it's not me.
yeah,
I'm telling you, just through the grapevine. I think someone has seen you. Someone has seen who you are, and this has been like the best biodata you could possibly have.
No, sorry. The answer is sorry. I'm on a Mario Party
It sounds
grind.
like it's no.
Okay, let me know when it turns into yes.
We're waiting for it to turn into yes.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to come over and have dinner with someone I don't know and have Italy samba and talk about my future prospects and my high school GPA. I know where this all leads to.
Give it a chance.
This is what I knew was coming. It's like the Hulk. You sound this cool guy on the internet until your Indian comes out.
I'm in your corner, and if you I hear that you're not ready yet, but if you want to be ready but are having trouble getting there, we can like go and have a talk. Like we can pour some like Johnny
Lipton
Walker
tea.
Black Label or whatever the fuck Indian people drink. That's what they drink, right?
Yes, Black Label.
I can't even smell it, let alone drink it. But we can
we're
sit,
soft.
sit out back and I'll talk to you with an accent. I'll even color in some kind of beard before we do it.
And
then,
say things that are a little questionable, but no young Indian person will correct you on.
Yeah, like just like slightly like not cancelable.
Yeah, but just just sort of a slight racist remark.
Slight racism, slight misogyny.
Yeah.
You know,
I know uncles that still whisper the word gay. So I mean, that's they're still working on it though. It's still a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
You know, and we haven't asked you, and maybe this is the challenge: is if you were not heterosexual, would you be okay letting your parents know, or do you need help with that, or what?
I'm straight, but I appreciate the offer. It's a bridge that I have not had to cross. I'd be terrified, bro. I couldn't even tell my parents I'm a streamer. I feel like that's like coming out of the closet career-wise in the Indian household.
If you've done that, like anything around, you know.
Yeah.
Sexual preferences.
Now the communication's open.
Once you pass that underwriting check, then you can come out. It's like no big deal. Like
I hate that we're just gonna turn into Indian uncles one day. It's just creeping up. We're doing underwriting on each other. It's gonna be a reality.
I'm already an uncle. It's cool. We can
You've accepted it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Okay, good. I'm still in the denial phase, so
yeah. But if seriously, if you need support, I guess like I said, we've got. You know, if you want,
do you want me to message you and be like, Dr. K, I'm interested in meeting? So no, I'm not gonna do that.
No. Message. Well, it depends. So you can't message me on Discord. You can message me on WhatsApp.
Oh, here we go.
Right?
I'll send you a meme too. I'll be like, 6 badam a day keeps COVID away, or whatever is going on.
That's great. Send me a lot of questionable advice. So let me ask you actually one last question. If we have questionable health advice for erectile dysfunction, do you think that would spread across Indian WhatsApp groups? Yes or no?
100%.
You think so?
Without a doubt. If you put it into like a picture with like a flower or a sunset, all the uncles will share it with each other. I promise you that.
Can we make you a biodata though when you're ready?
Like as a fun activity?
Yes. We'll make it on stream.
It has to be the worst biodata you're ever gonna make. Like I don't know what I have to offer. Like biodata wise.
Look at that insecurity.
Oh, here we go. Like, no, but like I'm saying from an objective point of view. Like, isn't biodata, like, for those of you in chat probably who don't know, like, biodata has like your GPA, what college you went to, your siblings' GPA. Like, it's so much number crunching. It's like people who are obsessed with their Twitch numbers created a way to match based off of income.
It's like a resume for your personal life that includes the best parts of your professional resume, but also includes things like height and whether you have hair and whether you eat meat or not. Right?
Oh, shit. I better get on it.
But I mean, so if you don't want to, totally cool. But I think it could be fun. I think we could make you a good one.
I don't want it to be circulating. Like, we'll talk. Maybe I'm interested. We'll see.
Okay, yeah. So
we'll see. I have to think about it.
You're telling me that you're not interested, but like any good Indian uncle, I'm sort of ignoring it. And I'm going to continue to tell you how it's going to be a good idea and how to overcome your insecurities and reassurances.
After this, I'm going to probably work at middle management at IBM as well. So
can I make one last pitch for this?
Go ahead.
This is a genuine pitch. The rest of it was memeing. And I think for the sake of content, if you want to make a biodata, dude, we'll find you a good Jyotish and we'll do your birth chart and all that. We'll go through the whole 9 yards. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I seriously think it would be fun for content.
Sure.
But on the real side, here's the thing that I've found is that there's actually a generation of people like you, dudes and women, who like don't want to make biodatas and don't want to meet boys, right? And like don't want someone who's like an engineer or a doctor or someone who's middle management at IBM. They want someone who's like fun and interesting and original, and their parents keep on throwing them these like, you know, middle of the road, top 50 MBA. Now I'm like middle management at some massive health system where I microtransact the healthcare system. And like, we're going to charge you for every Band-Aid. We're going to charge you like $8 per Band-Aid. Mm-hmm. Because if you didn't know, American healthcare is the microtransaction system that it's like you're like a 2-year-old and you're just clicking stuff on the iPad and you don't realize it's charging your bank account. And then you get like some $14,000 bill at the end because you're like, oh shit, the nurse asked me, do I want a pitcher to vomit in? Yeah. And I said yes, and I didn't realize
that's like $2,000
that the App Store was like chinging it in.
Yeah, sure.
So there are going to be people who like see those kinds of biodatas and they're like, yeah, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who has a piranha plant in their back. In their background.
Fuck, is that? They're not. It's not just a piranha plant, Dr. K. It's also slippers. So does that help my biodata or?
Yeah, no, I think that hurts and helps depending on what you're looking for. But you know.
So what your pitch is, Dr. K, is make a biodata for people who don't care about traditional biodata.
Yeah, you make a biodata that's authentically representative of
like a
you.
Hipster biodata.
Exactly. hipsterbiodata.co.in.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a marriage for all of your children who have C-class
who are
biodata.
weird. The undesirables.
Third class.
Yes, third class. Shadi.com doesn't work. Biodata doesn't work. Then we go to this piranha plant biodata.
Yeah, piranhaplantbiodata.co.in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Great.
Seriously, think about it.
Yeah, I'll think about it.
And then, you know, this offer, apparently there are literally there are hot singles in your area, okay?
No.
There are hot singles in your area. And it's not a scam. Like, no one's going to take a kidney. No one's trying to sell you like penis related things.
Yeah, enlargement, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Well, I'll think about that.
How tall are you?
5'10".
Real? Oh my God.
Is that good?
Nice. Oh yeah.
For Indian guys, how tall are you?
I'm like 5'8".
That biodata, Mark. Let me just write that down.
You know, the other thing we can do is we can just add things to your biodata from my biodata.
Just lie? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, we're like the same person, right? Like,
yeah, what do you mean? No, we're not. You look at your office, you got a fucking globe back there, and I got the BD-1 from Star Wars. I got Legos. You've got it looks like you're in a laboratory. You got a telescope up there. It's insane. It's amazing. I need to just put some books on this shelf.
Well, I
think.
can get some piranha plant slippers, and you can get some yoga books, and we'll be set.
Yeah. Then it will equal out.
Cool.
Fair.
Well, seriously, thanks for talking with us today. Thanks for coming on. Hope things go well for you.
Thank
if
you
we
so
can
much for
support
having
you
me.
in terms of, you know, content or biodatas or marriage or happiness or
marriage or biodata
Yeah.
or streaming or marriage.
there have to be female Twitch streamers who are Indian whose parents are giving them flack.
Yeah, but I'm not. I stay away from people on Twitch. I want to have someone far away from Twitch.
Okay, well, judge. Smart. He's smart. He's smart.
Just to ground myself a little bit.
Cool, man. Well, thank you very much. You know, and if y'all want to check out, I guess, Mario Party competitions with Ludwig, check out Squeex, and I'm sure you're going to be doing other fun stuff down the road. What time do you usually stream?
Oh, I don't know. Just afternoons and evenings on,
Okay.
Whenever.
Awesome, dude.
I don't really have a great schedule, but
Well, take care and good luck, man.
thank you so much. It was just so fun, and thank you for listening, and I learned a lot, so I really appreciate what
Likewise.
you guys do.
Take care, man. Bye.
Alrighty, bye.
Alrighty. So I thought it was a meme, chat, but it turns out that he is Dr. K. Like, what? I actually have a doppelganger out there. This is wild. He's like, you know, he quit banking, I quit medicine. Still doing it a little bit, you know, but both showed up. He's like super wholesome. I honestly thought so this is why we try not to watch stuff from people like before we interview them. Like I like going in blind and being able to like see the person, because I'm pretty sure if I watch, because I'd seen like one clip or a couple clips, I think one really, but he says fiddling with his head. Well, we are still have to look. The biodata is like, okay, like Davison is little different from, you know, things, but it's okay. But yeah, he's fantastic. And I think I was also like, I think it's super cool how he understands like a lot of these things intrinsically that yoga and meditation try to teach about compassion and empathy and understanding the perspective where people come from. And it's like, I had to go to school to learn that shit. It's great. Can you prescribe something for his hairline? Physician-assisted suicide is not legal, and I'm not even sure that it would be ethical in this standpoint, but basically, that's what his options are.